I would say if you have your beers, it's time to crack them. Might as well enjoy this happy hour.
Cheers.
Cheers. I can't see mine. It's a ghost.
I can only see like one screen at a time, so I'm not sure how that.
Well, that's because you're on your phone.
Oh, okay.
I think.
I have no idea.
I see 4 people.
Okay. Maybe I'm in the wrong. I don't know.
We won't be able to see the participants. It'll just be us 4.
Oh,
Okay.
gotcha.
For now, yeah.
Sure.
They'll be able to ask questions and things, and
Okay.
and then we can answer them for them and stuff like that. But yeah, so I think they can, for whatever, I can't get it to show more than whoever's just talking for them though. So
Okay. I did a Zoom happy hour with one of the hosts on KFan a while ago, and they had 50 people up there all. It was kind of overwhelming.
all on the screen at the same time?
Yeah, you couldn't actually fit that many. You had to like scroll, and not all of them knew to mute.
That's a lot going on at once. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, you want to give it 1 or 2 more minutes so we can get started, maybe?
Yeah, 1 more minute.
Yeah.
Looks like people are still trickling in.
Yeah. Perfect. All right. So do you want me to keep this screen up, Andy, or do you want me to go split screen with you, just you guys?
Oh, you can keep this up.
Okay.
Great. Thank you to everybody who's joined so far. We'll get started here in about 30 seconds. All right. Well, we will kick things off. We are getting a little bit of feedback there. Okay. Well, thanks everybody for joining us today. We're very excited to expand upon the story of Utepils going solar. My name is Andy Stallman, and I'm the Director of Sales for Impact Power Solutions. I was introduced to Dan and Deb Justesen by Insight Brewing after we added solar onto Insight's building. Utepils has since become the 3rd brewery that has installed, that we've installed solar panels on, and it's by far our largest array on a brewery at 81 kilowatts. This project and this brewery are unique in many ways, so we wanted to feature them and their story. At the end, we'll get to door prizes, so many of you can try Utepils' fantastic beer. So with that said, I'd like to introduce our 2 guest speakers, Dan and Deb Justesen from Utepils Brewing. So first of all, Dan and Deb, thank you very much for joining. To kick things off, would you both tell us a little bit about your backgrounds, how you got into craft beer, and most importantly, what kind of beer are you currently enjoying?
Dan, you want to go first?
Sure. So my background was that at age 40, I got laid off and decided to find a new career. Ended up co-owning a small nanoscale brewery over in St. Paul that some of you may have visited, which was called Vine Park Brewing Company. Got to know the industry and decided that Minnesota was going to become a booming craft beer destination, and that I wanted to do something big. So my partner had different ideas. We split up, and so having been in the industry for 10 years, I decided that I was going to create something and found partners that I had met through those years, and we put together Utepils. And I am drinking, if I can get it to show up because I'm using the green screen background here, is our new summer wheat called Plaid Bikini. My background is because I'm Not able to be at the beer garden today, but that's the background. That's our beer garden by the creek. Otherwise, you'd be seeing a giant, messy living room behind me. So.
All right.
Very good.
All right. Well, I really got, my background is really in corporate America. So I worked at Wells Fargo for 37 years. And when I decided to move on to something else, I decided what better than to hang out with my husband all day long at the brewery. So that is how I got engaged. So I've been involved really full time at the brewery for about 1.5 years. And what am I having? I have our IPA Tall Tales because I'm at the cabin and it has a big fish on it. So there you go.
Very good. By the way, for anybody who has questions, you can type those in the chat box and we'll get to those at the end. All right, so Dan and Deb, how long has Utepils been around and where exactly are you located?
So we opened Utepils in February of 2017. And we are located, as you can see in the background there, on the banks of Bassett Creek, where it exits Theodore Wirth Park and flows through North Minneapolis. So to give you some sense of orientation, if you know where Target Field is and the Rod Carew statue is there, that's second. And if you were just to head west on that, as it leaves downtown, it turns into Glenwood Avenue. And the location that we are at is the old Glenwood Inglewood Bottled Water Company, which has implications that we'll talk about later.
Very good. And what types of beers does Utepils typically focus on?
So my short answer is delicious. The slightly longer answer is that we decided to do classic European lagers and ales. So we don't really chase fads. We think if something's been around for, 50 or 100 years, then there's some kind of, realness to it as making people happy. So we're going to make those things. One of the great things about European beers is they've had hundreds of years to develop these gorgeous beers. And the problem is by the time they get to the United States, they're old through the shipping process. So we brew those styles of beer fresh and authentically. We literally bring over the grains and hops from Europe to brew those beers here in our facility using local water and local talent.
Very good. Now, before we get into the solar portion, and we're getting a little feedback there, I'm not sure how. But before we get into that, your building has a really unique story and it enabled other sustainable processes in your brewing. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and why that's important to you?
It's just kind of an ethical viewpoint of a way that I've always looked at the world, and so same with Deb, I believe. So our site is, when I went looking for a brewery site, the criteria needed to be that it needed to be zoned industrial to allow for a brewery to be there. And I told my real estate agent, I need a place where I can walk out the door and have a beer garden, and it needs to be like a park. And he laughed and said, yeah, so that's never going to happen. The lucky thing is in 2015, this property came available and we were able to tour it before virtually anybody was in there. And what it is the old Glenwood Inglewood Bottled Water Company. So it started back, probably 100 years ago. And so the site was zoned industrial, which made it a possibility for us. And in the 1930s, much of the land around it was donated to the Minneapolis park system, either directly or through tax forfeiture, so that every side of our facility is a Minneapolis park. It's all green space right around us, yet we have that industrial zoning. And we also have the wells that bring up artesian glacial water that Glenwood sold for so long. So all of our beers are brewed with that water, which is a great resource for us. We don't pull out of the Minneapolis River like everybody else does. One of the other features that we were able to do when we looked at the facility was the fact that we were interested in solar even at the beginning. And so we knew that there was great sunshine factors on it. There were no trees overhanging it. And when we went to build our system out, because we had a clear vision of what kinds of beers that we wanted to create, we were able to build a custom brew house in Bavaria and have it shipped over to us. And it uses a technology that's called, under their brand name, variable boil. But what it does is it's basically controls the pressure inside the system so that we can reduce the amount of energy going into it dramatically and save a tremendous amount of energy. To put it in clearer terms, the system we bought versus a standard direct fire boil system, probably from China, would use about 800 units of energy to make a batch of wort, which is the precursor of beer. In our system, we use about 200, which is pretty a dramatic reduction in the amount of gas that we need to run the boiler with. When we, in fact, went to the gas company to see if we could get a rebate on it, they looked at our numbers and said, we really can't give you a rebate. And I said, well, why not? And they said, the basic point of a rebate is to get people to do things they wouldn't economically do otherwise. This is so obvious, everybody will be doing this. And so this technology has been around for 10 years. We are the first brewery in North America to use it on a commercial basis. We have breweries coming in from all over the United States looking at it. And they said, that's a really good point. We got the rebate. We also got an award for the most innovative energy project that they have ever seen. So we were pretty happy with that.
It's really cool. If you guys haven't been to the Utepils tap room, I highly recommend it. It's a fantastic place to enjoy a couple beverages. So you mentioned that you already had solar in mind, but other than my incessant calling, what was the key reason that you guys decided to, really start evaluating and going through the process?
We had built into our lease when we started negotiating it from the beginning to have solar rights to our roof. And we also, at the time with the landlord, had, if they ever installed solar projects anywhere on the campus, as they were calling it, because there's a number of buildings beyond what you can see in that image on the screen, that we had the right to participate in that at a percentage equal to our usage of the square footage of the complex. So it was always a priority in the sense of values. It just wasn't a priority in terms of spending our money as a startup business. I think what pushed over the edge beyond Andy's persistence really came down to the opportunity to take advantage of some government programs. One, the tax credits, and two, the city of Minneapolis had the ability to provide some grant funds. And thank God the city was able to kind of basically earmark those for us for a number of years, that was so that we could actually get to the spot where we could take advantage of them. It's a very, very big project, and those two elements were a huge factor for us in moving forward.
So we sat down around Christmas in 2018, and we were trying to decide who was going to purchase the solar array. So Deb, walk us through the process of deciding who was going to buy the array, whether it was the business or a few of you on your own. How did that work on your side?
Sure. So at the time, we knew that our investor group of the brewery would probably not see a $200,000 expenditure as something they wanted to take advantage of right then, right? So we knew it wouldn't be the brewery. And we knew obviously our landlords had other priorities, and so it wasn't really something they were interested in. So where we kind of landed with all of that, based on the tax credits and things, is we determined that Dan and I would start our own solar energy company. So while it's on top of Utepils, the actual company is called Solar Kiss because that was a name I wanted I wanted to name a beer that, and nobody wanted to let me name a beer that. So I thought, okay, I'll name our solar energy company that. So that kind of made it a little bit easier that I could just open up a new organization, Solar Kiss LLC, and then everything could really, run through that with Dan and I being the owners of Solar Kiss. So
sure. All right. So you were the go-to person during the installation, and you actually ended up, logging your hours of how many hours you spent on the process for tax purposes. So how much work was it during the installation? Typical week, what was involved?
I have to say, I don't think it was a lot of work really on our side, which was great. You guys had a project manager that dealt with everything. I would say there were some weeks nothing happened, and there were some weeks, maybe it was 5-6 hours with, coordinating when people are going to come, when do they need access to the roof, when do we need to have our power shut down, things of that nature. But it really didn't take that much on my part, which I was pleasantly surprised by. Having been a project manager at Wells Fargo, I was worried about what it might entail. So it actually surprised me that it wasn't quite as laborious as I had expected.
That's good.
I should jump in here just for a second and give credit to Deb because she did go through the process, which was not so laborious, but just detailed, of getting the separate LLC set up and then getting the proper paperwork done with the city, and and getting all of that part of it set up and coordinating with the different agencies so that we could then move forward with the actual construction. And so it's something that I wouldn't have been good at, but she was very good at.
Yeah.
She was very good to work with.
Yeah.
So at this point, the array has been up and running for about 6 months. Have you been following along with your online portal, and is it working as expected?
I am following on the online portal almost daily. I check into it. It's kind of fascinating to me, at least. And, I think the biggest challenge we had was actually the interaction with Xcel Energy and getting the billing showing up. And I would look at what we were seeing through our online portal and not seeing that reflected with Xcel. And so I think that was kind of the early on frustration that I had. Now that I've worked through with Andy on the invoicing and billing so that we can demonstrate what is the economic value of the energy that we're creating to Utepils, since Utepils will be paying Solar Kiss for it, it's actually quite exciting. The dramatic change, and again, it's partially due to the installation that we have, which is a relatively low profile system, that during the winter, production was pretty low. I'll be really honest. We got a very dramatic early start to the winter with a heavy ice storm and snow. And as the snow did start to eventually melt, it just kind of slumped down the angle and then became a dam to stop it from clearing. And so for the winter, it was almost nothing in terms of production. I was kind of like, wow, that's kind of not fun, because I'm thinking of what I could build to pay back the money that we invested. So with March and the sun melting all that snow off, it has been amazing to see the change in production, and it has shot up. And we've had a very sunny spring, so that's been super helpful for this energy production. And I know looking at the screens, I believe that in May we actually went over the projection for that month. And based on what June was looking like as of 3 days ago, I suspect that with good weather, we may actually overproduce in terms of the reporting for that. So I'm pretty excited about it. It's going to be a very dramatic bell-shaped curve, given where we are in winter. Summer changes, but I think overall it's going to reach the numbers that we projected, or Andy projected, and that we counted on.
Yeah. It's all averages. So you will be billing Utepils for the energy, as you said. So how are you ensuring that this is beneficial for both you as the owner and investor and for the brewery?
So our contract will include a small roof rent, just to delineate that as a specific line item in both budgets, that we are, in a sense, displacing part of the potential future use of the roof for the brewery. If you notice on the left-hand side of the screen on that image, there's a cooling unit with 6 fans going. And there's a large area that we left open around it because we have expansion plans for that unit. So all of that was kind of pre-planned into the layout. So we are billing Utepils for the very specific solar credit that the system generates by afternoon energy usage that would never exist if there was no solar system. And then we are also generating an invoice portion payment for the direct energy that is produced each month. One of the things that I can't invoice for, but it is beneficial for Utepils, which is good for Deb and I as the primary investors in Utepils, is that it seems to be buffering the overcharges. And you probably can give the proper term for that, Andy, where you go over that number, whatever it is, even if it's for a moment during the day, and you get whacked with charges by Excel. And so far, it seems to be reducing those to almost nothing, those days where we are going over that limit. It surprised me when I studied the bills with Andy as we went through it, how much of the charge of the Excel bill was for just energy that they're providing us. And then that overage charge was almost equal to the energy production. So we can invoice for what we can show we've created, and we can invoice for the credit. I can't invoice for the fact that there's no apparent overages anymore, but yet that has significantly reduced the bill for Utepils to pay to Excel Energy directly.
Correct. And for everybody on the call, what he's referring to is the demand charge on the bill.
Thank you.
And solar helps offset your energy usage, and your demand charge is your highest 15-minute usage period throughout the month. And so what they're finding is their highest usage periods are typically in the afternoon when they're using their AC units mostly. And that happens to be when the solar is working. So coincidentally, their demand charges have been coming down. Now, we can't guarantee that because all it takes is one cloudy, really hot day where your solar system might not be working while those AC units are. So it's tough for us to prove that will happen, but it is a very nice additional benefit when you do see it. So very good.
The other thing that we've done is built into the contract that Utepils can use the fact that we're creating solar energy and producing the beer as a marketing element, that we're producing solar powered beer, that we're conscientious and respectful of the environment, which goes along with the energy system that, brew house that we built. And it's just basically an ethical type of business behavior, which we think is a positive for craft beer drinkers. And a good thing for any business in the community.
Absolutely. So you did the outdoor patio 2 years ago, and you did solar last year. So what does Utepils have in store this year?
Well, I'll be really flippant and say survival, given the whole COVID thing. There's a lot of investment in a brewery, and so what we're trying to do is recognize we have a new market environment, and the investment that we made into the patio is dramatically paying off because people are feeling very comfortable and very safe out there. It's unique. It literally is like no other tap room outdoor space that you're going to find anywhere, I think, in Minnesota, until you get maybe out to New Ulm and or if you go over to Wisconsin and you're, at New Glarus, you can see in the imagery, you're literally surrounded by greenery. We have ducks, geese, bald eagles, deer walk through there. And yet when you're sitting in the beer garden, you are literally a mile from Target Field. You can see through the trees, the IDS Center. And it's quiet. It's just so quiet. You can talk to each other. And that's what beer is all about, I think, is sitting with your friends and telling stories. And so that beer garden creates the ethos of what we wanted to create in terms of a business. So for this year's project,
Yeah.
we're looking at some process improvements to bring our cost of goods down. Simple things, not dramatic. We did add an event space just in time to get it shut down, which is that small solar system on the far left of the image. That area, we call it Bay 10. We were doing corporate events, birthday parties, weddings, stuff. So hopefully we'll be able to bring that back online at some point here with whatever the rules are that keeps people safe and they can still have fun.
So at this point, the patio is open. Any other ways that people on this call can help support Utepils Brewing?
They can enjoy Utepils any way they feel comfortable. We know that, there are still people who are, their level of comfort is ordering it and having it delivered. And they can do that through their local liquor stores, or they can go to their liquor stores, or at this point now, restaurants and bars are starting to open up, and we are on tap in those locations. And we also offer a drive-up service where if you come to the brewery, you can order beer to go, or you can enjoy it out on the patio or in our tap room. And all of that can be found through our website, which is utepilsbrewing.com. Because of the regulations, you do need to book a reservation to come in, which is very simple. You can also get them walk-ins if they're available. You can find our beer function, so you can find a retail store or a bar restaurant that's serving it near you. Or you can order the beer to be ready for you when you come drive up, and you can just walk in and grab it. Or if you don't feel comfortable at all walking in the building, just walk around the outside, and we now have an outdoor service door window that feeds or serves out to the beer garden area. So you can just walk up entirely outside, walk up to the window and say, hey, I've got my order placed. Can I get my beer? Or if you're in the beer garden, you can just order a beer and go back to your table.
Perfect. All right. Final question for you. Anything else you'd like to say about the process or IPS, or to anyone who might be on the fence about adding solar to their business?
I think the thing that I go back to is that every project runs into challenges. And an old friend of mine always said that the difference between a journeyman and a master carpenter was one thing. It was the master carpenter knows how to hide the mistakes or fix them. They don't stick out like a sore thumb and last. And what we had with working with IPS is we ran into problems, things that didn't go perfectly. But what I left with was a great taste in my mouth in terms of the experience, because in every case where there was a problem or a challenge or something went wrong, they stepped up and fixed it in the way that I would do it for my customer. And so I thought that was, to me, the most important part, and the one you don't really know when you walk into doing a contract. How are they going to work through the challenges? Because there are always challenges.
Awesome. Well, we really enjoyed working with you guys. Let's go ahead and take a look at a couple of the questions. Kyle, do you have those pulled up?
I do. I actually, I just texted you to make sure that we are good for these. But yeah, so the first question we had was, does the tap room or other customer area provide any indication as to the size of the array or the power produced? Kind of a question about how knowing how big of an array you're going to put on your roof.
Sure. In terms of communicating to the customer, we have a big wall panel that's static. It's not live, but it shows the roof, it shows the system, and it shows what the net energy and environmental benefits. So one of the things I'm always excited to look at is how much CO2 have we saved? And that is communicated based on a system design level. I also, because I have access to the portal, I'm able to take screen clips of what's going on, and I post those to our Facebook and social media every month or two. And just talking about, hey, it's a great day not only to be making beer, but it's a great day to be making energy and saving CO2. And I know, the numbers are in the, 20 tons that we have saved or something on that nature. And so I think that's a communication that we want to make, and we don't want to overdo it, but we try to communicate. I'd like to be able to figure out a way to show the portal live inside the tap room. I will admit that other things have just kept me a little busy lately. I haven't got to that yet.
Sure. Another question we had was, how do landlords, this is directed to Andy here, how do landlords capture the revenue produced by solar in a triple net lease situation where the tenant pays electrical bills directly to Excel?
I'm glad you said Andy.
So, well, and Dan covered this a little bit, but this was several meetings that Dan and Deb and I had where we helped provide a template of a contract where they could set up an agreement with Utepils, and Dan and Deb would be able to bill them for every kilowatt hour generated per month. So we have a process in place where their online system will send them a report of how many kilowatt hours were produced, and they're able to issue an invoice to Utepils for that number of kilowatt hours. We also calculated exactly what each of those kilowatt hours is worth to the brewery, and they're billing them a little bit less than what it's worth to the brewery to ensure that it's a net positive result for Utepils.
Okay, we have another two-parter here. One is how much of your energy usage is offset by the array, and how has the power production compared to the initial estimates?
Do you want to take that, Andy, or do you want me to?
So the initial estimates, I think you covered, and I did it again today. It looks like we're 5% ahead of pace on the year. Again, really bad January, February, but a fantastic April, May, June so far has made up for it. And again, we base our estimates on 30 years of data as well as local weather. So we have a very good basis, and all we're preaching is that our estimate will be accurate over the course of the 25-year period. So there will be, I saw 2 years ago, the local irradiance for the area was 77%, which simply means we had 23% less sunshine than was expected. Last year was much better, and this year is the best year on record since 2016. So we're expecting a lot of people to produce more than our estimates this year, but it all averages out. But as far as how much of their total energy was offset by the rooftop system, when we installed it, I believe it was at 31%. Do you remember anything different, Dan or Deb?
I think that was the kind of that we thought we could get somewhere between 25 and 35%. And I know in the course of the project, there was some contraction of the initial layout based on structural constraints of the roof. So yeah, it should be somewhere in that zone.
Yep.
Okay, we have a question here. If you owned 100% of the business and the building, would you have to set up a separate LLC to buy the solar array?
I don't think you would have to.
No, you wouldn't need to. We did it for specific reasons. We didn't own the building, and we didn't see that we could justify to the Utepils investors that was the priority to do with the funds at that time. So we chose to create it separately. There's probably elements for the tax reasons that those flow through better or differently depending on the investor group or investors if you're a single investor. It may all be the same depending on your different financial structures. And I do not have the technology in terms of accounting and tax law to give you any advice on that.
We have a question here about power storage. Is there any local power storage akin to the Tesla Powerwall that could help with demand spikes?
So at this point, it's not financially feasible in Excel territory. That's not to say there aren't other utilities within Minnesota where it absolutely can make sense. It also can make sense on the utility side for much larger projects. But for Utepils specifically, it would not have made sense from the business side.
All right. This one is hi, I live near Utepils and I'm a big fan. Great job. And thanks for building an awesome brewery. Sounds like solar was a no-brainer, but you took a creative route to finance the project. What were all the financial structures you considered to fund the solar project?
So we looked at all of the different things that Andy had in terms of doing it either if we own the building or trying to do something in conjunction with the landlord due to some different financing that would be available. But that wasn't a priority for our landlord to be involved in that. So it kind of put the project on hold as Deb and I tried to figure out how we could rationalize this. The need to recognize our primary business is Utepils, and the primary business of Utepils is making great beer experiences, not, doing solar energy projects. So
we did look at going back to our investor group and perhaps having a smaller subset of them that may have wanted to, 3 or 4 of them that may have wanted to get together and end up, creating some sort of a solar company. And I think at that point, we decided to take the least complex route and just kind of fund it ourselves.
And the experience of having multiple investors suggested that having this business as Solar Kiss be just the 2 of us, that's enough complexity, and the board meetings are way more fun.
We have somebody asking, does the project make use of the PV demand credit rider? And P.S. Utepils is great. I should see if we have some in the fridge.
I totally agree with the second, and yes, Andy can use the proper terminology, but the orientation of our panels was set up to ensure that we got tremendous production during the afternoon, which is where the PV demand credit, if I remember right, Andy, comes into play. And so for us too, as the brewery, given the scale of the building, we do use a lot of energy for HVAC, in addition to our canning operations and other things, which happen, probably more in the morning. But energy usage is really dramatically impacted by the air conditioning system. So by having our greatest production in the afternoon during the heat of the day, that worked out very well for us.
Yes, and just to further go with that, it does utilize the PV demand credit rider. They are rewarded for anything that is produced between 1 and 7 p.m., which is Excel's peak. And so we did the best we could to align it as close to south as possible, or even southwest. When we did the analysis and we pointed the panels, even with the roof near the patio, so just imagine directly south from that, we couldn't fit nearly as much solar. So it's a fine line between pointing the panels in the exact right direction and also how much we can fit on the roof. So it looks like there's one more question.
You can ask questions about non-solar things, about beer too. I'm happy to talk about that.
That was all the ones I had, Andy. If you have another one, feel free to.
I just saw one more. With German-inspired beer, did German leadership on solar energy play into the early decision making?
Not in the sense of us interacting with anybody in Germany, other than our travels in Germany reinforced how possible solar was. I mean, when we would drive through the Hallertau region of hop production, you would see acres and acres of solar panels along the roads over and over again, and windmills, of course. But just the embrace of the technology was there. So I believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, our inverters are actually German?
Yes.
So I think that the fact that they have such a robust industry and supported inside their country means that they have a lot of incentive. Their companies are able to really push the technology boundaries. And so in that sense, we got to take advantage of that. And I believe the solar panels are Minnesota made?
Correct. They're made up in northern Minnesota, up in the Iron Range. All right. Well, I can't thank you guys enough for doing this. I hope everybody on the call learned something about solar and also wants to go drink at Utepils this summer.
So Andy, I see one more question there, and I just want to answer it. I don't know. That would be a technical engineering answer that I simply don't have the answer to.
What's the question?
They want to know if it would be feasible to have an electric powered calandria, which is the exterior boiling function for the brew house. So instead of using gas at all, could you use electric? I suspect you could. I mean, when he talks about it, the calandria is somewhat like your instant demand hot water, where instead of keeping a big tank of it hot all the time, you're basically heating it in a flow through pipe situation. I don't know the answer. I know that the technology we were able to use with the gas system with the boiler was tremendously effective, and it's given us a very technologically advanced system that allows us to brew it, honestly, not just less energy beer, it also gives us the ability to brew better beer, because we actually boil the wort, which is a requirement of the process, at a lower temperature, which means that we get a better result. And I won't get into the technology of why in terms of the biochemistry, but having a lower temperature yet still maintaining a boil does good things for the wort and does good things for our beer, which comes through, I think, when you taste it.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you to everybody for joining. We will be following up with an email yet this afternoon with all of the door prize winners, which will equal either gift cards or growler fill-ups at Utepils. And bring all your family and friends when you go to redeem those gift cards.
When you come, and if you see us, Deb or I, please say hello. And if you have further questions about the beer or what's popped into your mind about this conversation, we're happy to chat with you.
Awesome. Thank you guys.
Great. All right. Thank you.
Have a great night.
Bye.